and she'd say no. And then one time we went to a movie together. I took her on a date on an evening. We've always, from the day we met, I've dated her. Even from the day we got married, I've taken her on a date every Saturday night. So Saturday night, we're going to be creative and go on a date. I'm going to pull the car out in the front, and I'm going to go knock on the door, and I'm going to do something fun with her. I'm going to take her on a date. We're going to go to dinner or a movie or do something fun. And so this was in my first year of marriage, toward the end of my first year of marriage. I took her on this date, and in those days we were so poor we couldn't pay attention. And we had a pickup truck with a bench seat. And I always liked that pickup truck because when I would go open her door and she would get in the passenger side, by the time I walked around and got into the driver's side, she was slid over into the middle. So she was sitting right beside me. And sometimes I'd have to kind of nudge her to even get in. She always liked to sit beside me. And I liked that. It was always precious to me. And so this time, though, I'm taking her on this date. I open the door and she gets in. And I go around to the other side, and she's still over there. And she's hugging the other door. And then, so I didn't say anything. I just took her to a movie. And after the movie, we get back and I open the door and I come in and she's still way over there. And then she began to cry. And she just sobbed and she said, "I can't do this anymore." And I said, "What?" I mean, here's how oblivious sometimes men are. I said, What can't you do? And she says, "I can't live on commissions. I can't have the ups and downs. One week we have money and the other week we don't. I want stability where I can know how much money's coming in so that I can pay the bills and I can make sure that we have groceries and the power. I have to have a steady income." And then with big crocodile tears coming down her face, she said, "Would you please go get a good job?" My wife said that to me. And I said, it just shocked me. And I said, "Well, sweetheart, I promise you we're going to win big. I have made only $8,000 that entire year." In those days, that was more money than it is today. But it still was like not hardly any money. And so she said, "Please go get a good job." And I said, "Honey, I don't care if we have to sacrifice for a little while. It's going to be a struggle for a little while. And even if we have to eat bugs for a little while." I was so stupid just saying that. I was just joking. But I said, even if we have to struggle and sacrifice and even eat bugs for a little while, the day's going to come when we're wealthy. And then she said, "Well, I don't want to eat bugs." And I said, "I don't mean that literally, you know that." And anyway, I then turned to her out of desperation, not knowing what to do. I turned to her and said, "I'll tell you what I'll do then." I said, "I'm going to make sure," excuse my voice, I've spoken to too many meetings. Could I get some water, maybe? If we have some up here. Thank you. So I said, thank you so much. I said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do then. I'm going to go open a business account." Because in those days, all we had was our personal checking account. It was hers and mine. It was a joint account. She could sign on it and I would sign on it. And if I ever got money, it would go into that account and she would then be able to pay the bills and do whatever. But she always saw the fluctuations, the wild fluctuations of that checking account. Your checking account have wild fluctuations? Well, they're not too wild. They were like this, way down there. And I said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do then." I said, "Tell me how much money you need each month, and I'm just going to make sure you have that amount, at least that amount." And she said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, let's figure it out." And so we sat there and we listed everything. And finally she came up with an amount, and it was a lot more than I thought it was going to be, because it included the house payment, included groceries, included our date nights. It included things like tithing to our church and other things. She listed all this stuff, and I kind of took a big gulp and said, "Oh my gosh." I mean, it just hit me that I've got to make a bunch more money. And I said, "Okay, then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure," I took that amount of money and I divided it in half, And I said, I'm going to make sure that that amount of money is in a checking account for you, in our personal checking account. On the 1st, you'll get this much, and on the 15th, you'll get this much. So I put my wife on salary. And it wasn't like it was me. We agreed together, because it wasn't just me. I'm not the dictator, I'm the partner. But I was the breadwinner. And so the very next day, all I could find in my life was $50. And I went down to a bank, and I opened a bank called Monte Holm and Associates. I opened a checking account, a business account, and I put that $50 in it. And the 15th was coming just a few days later, and I said, oh, I got to have this money. And I busted it, and I made sure, and I was willing to do anything that's legal and honest and right to make sure I was not going to have my wife ever miss a payment. And so by the skin of my teeth, I was able to put that money out of our business account. I put that in the personal account. And I told her the money's there, and it was, and she paid some bills. And then on the 1st, I did it again, and the 15th, and I never missed a payment. It put a lot of pressure on me, but I never missed a payment to my sweetheart. And you know what happened? Is her support just skyrocketed. She fell in love with our business. And I was under lots of pressure to try to make sure that darn payment was in there. But it was so good for me to know what the minimum was, what I had to do. And then that continued to grow. Monte Holm and Associates, that business account, it made not much money, but it made enough that all the money in our lives would go, any money I earned from our business would go into Monte Holm and Associates, and then it would pay twice a month, it would pay her that amount. And over the next couple of years, I went from $8,000 to $42,000. And then I went to $108,000. Then I went to $250,000. Then I went to $500,000. And most of that, she was still back there at that small payment. And she started realizing that this isn't fair. And she said, I need more. And I was happy to have her. And finally she said, you know what, I'm going to take over both accounts. And she did. And then a couple years later, a true story, a couple years later, she said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put myself on salary at $1 million a year. I'm going to take $83,000 every month, and that's what I'm going to have for our family. And you know what? I was happy with that. And it doesn't bother me. It's never bothered me that my wife, all she ever thinks about is trying to support our family, help grow our family, help do good things for our family. And so that her support was purchased with cash. And she has been the most incredible, supportive, and she's not a shallow person. I mean, I'm telling you, she probably wouldn't want me to say that she was purchased with cash. But I was purchased with cash. My loyalty and my commitment to our company, what happens if a company doesn't pay you? If you do the work and it doesn't pay you? I was purchased with cash. We're trying to purchase all of you with cash, but you got to go earn it. And this opportunity is better than anything you've ever seen. I submit to you that this is the best opportunity you have ever seen. And if you don't believe that, then you didn't listen very good at this event. Has this been a good event for you? Yes. Has it been life-changing for you? Yes. Well, we'll see. We'll see. My hope is that you go home a different person than came here. I'm more convinced than I've ever been in my life that you can do what Teresa has done. That you can do what I've done. I'm more convinced than I've ever been in my life that wherever you come from, whatever your background, whatever your nationality, whatever your prior jobs are, whoever you are and whatever challenges and circumstances you come from, you can succeed here. I believe that. That doesn't mean you will. It just means you can. There's a big difference between can and will. The question never has been and it never will be, can I? The question always has been, and it always will be, will I? Will you do what it takes to do it? You know, most of the leaders in our company would probably do about anything to help you succeed. I mean, if they could climb out of their own skin and climb in your skin and be you and do it for you, they probably would. That's how much they care. That's how much they love you. That's how much they want you to win. How many of you have somebody on your team? How many of you have somebody, you've got to recruit somewhere. You've got at least one person on your team, raise your hand. The rest of you got to go to work. You got to go get some people on your team. But if you even have one person on your team, have you ever noticed how bad you want that person to succeed? Not just for you, you want them to succeed for them. And sometimes you get pretty frustrated. You want to grab them by the throat. Please don't do this. Or you want to grab them by the shoulders, or you want to shake them. And you want to say to them, I swear I want you to succeed more than you seem to want to succeed. Don't you feel that way about some of your people?
Yes.
You honestly want them to succeed more than they seem to want to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so some of you probably would climb out of your own skin and climb in and be them if you could to help them succeed. Nobody can do that. They haven't invented a way to do that yet. I doubt that's ever coming. But you must personally accept the responsibility for who you are, and you must personally accept the responsibility to succeed here. Whether or not you succeed here isn't can you, it's will you. But there's no question that you can, but are you willing to make the subtle changes that must be made to mold the you that is into the successful you that could be? That's why we hold events like this. If you really question, why do we have big conventions? Why do we hold any meeting whatsoever? Why does Teresa want us to have a meeting after the meeting? To focus us, to help us go from where we are up to that next level. You can do this. But it's interesting that out of thousands and thousands of people that come to conventions, so many go back home and they mamby-pamby. They just sort of mamby-pamby. We had a life-changing experience, and yet it didn't change our lives. We had a life-changing experience that didn't change our lives. It's always amazed me. It's always amazed me that you can go to any city in the world, in our business or any other business, and you'll find people in the same city, with the same market, with the same background, might even have the same age. They certainly have the same company and the same opportunity, same comp model, same products and services, and one makes $500,000 a year, the other makes $50,000 a year. It's them, it's you. Say this with me. I personally accept the responsibility for my life, for my business, for my success. So you've got to accept that, you all. I mean, each one of us individually, we've got to accept it. Monte Holm was that. I mean, I simply came to a meeting and somebody gave me a little presentation and I fell in love with it and I decided I'm going to do it. You know, there's not a single leader anywhere in our company. There is no leader anywhere in our company that wasn't once where you are. There's not one. All those people on those stages were once, that spoke over the last few days, they were once where you are. Exactly. They were just like you. They walk and talk and act and dress just like you. Same kind of circumstances, most of them. I mean, there may be some uniquenesses here and there, but these are people just like you that got stirred in their souls. Facts are, studies show that human beings generally make their best lasting decisions after significant emotional experiences. And studies show that most people don't have significant emotional, life-changing experiences in their own natural environment. In your home with your own routines, you're probably not going to have all of a sudden wake up and have some life-changing emotional experience. You have to pull people out of their natural environment to go to big places, to meet big people, to see big things, to make big changes in their life. That's why we hold conventions. That's why we have these events. You need to be at them and you need to have your teammates at them. But then you need to take the charge. When you come to an event like this, you need to take all your notes. I hope you've taken a lot of notes. But then you go home and put those notes on a shelf somewhere and don't think about them. Don't review them much, right? Say right. Right. That's what happens to many. That's what I do. Except I do one thing that affects me in a big way. I take all my notes. I refuse to go to bed when I get home. Refuse to go to bed without going through all of my notes. And by the way, when I'm taking notes, I put big stars by the big things, by the things I know I must change. But I take the time to go through my notes. By the way, I do this with my spiritual life. I do this with my family life, and I certainly do it in my business life. When I take notes and I hear something that's important that I ought to do, I quickly jot them down. But I don't go to bed after an event without sucking out of those notes the 4 things or the 5 things, maximum 4 or 5 of the biggies that I'm going to really focus on. And I pull them out and put them on a 3x5 card, a big print, and I put that in my pocket and I keep it with me, and I put it in a place where I'm going to review it multiple times a day, and I'm going to remember that event and remember those big things that I decided I'm going to change. You can't go and, it's the old saying, you can't eat an elephant in one bite. You eat an elephant one bite at a time. I'm not interested in eating elephants, but you know the point. Is you can't do big things you take these subtle things, these 3 things or these 4 or 5 things that you're going to do, and you obsess over them and you hover over them and you go to work on them. That's how you change you. And so out of this event, you don't go home and just put your notes aside until after you've sucked out of those notes the things that are life-changing and put them into a simple little plan of what you're going to do, because you own you. You're in charge of you. You're responsible for what you're going to do after an event like this. And this can either be a catalyst for growth or another meeting of stagnation in your life. I hope it's a catalyst for growth. I hope it has stirred your soul like nothing ever has. I hope it's caused you, that it's fueled in you a desire and a determination. The 2 big D words, a desire and a determination to change, to make the changes. That you're going to embrace the few changes that must be made. That you're going to fix the holes in your boat. I love the comment a few minutes ago by one of our power couples that you got to find your strengths and focus on your strength. And I think with couples you do that. You find what you're good at, what he or she's good at, and you work together, and that's how teamwork works. But I will tell you that if there's a hole in your boat, you better fix the hole in your boat. And a lot of us, in your own personal life, if you had a big, beautiful boat, and I've got a bunch of them in my life, my family owns some. We have a big, beautiful houseboat out on Lake Powell that's got 14 bedrooms. And we have a big pontoon boat it's a floating little day trip type things when we go to our big lake out there, which we don't do but a few times a year. But we've got this monster thing that'll hold 35 people, and it's got a bathroom on it, and it's got a big slide on it, and it's got 2 of the most powerful engines that they make in boating, and it can take our entire family and friends up the lake, up to see things like the big gigantic bridges. And Lake Powell is just a spectacular place. We need to get you out there sometime. But we have that pontoon boat, and then we have a Malibu surf boat. You ever seen a surf where you push a button in it, and you can create waves just like the ocean that actually curl. The kids can get back there on surfs, and this big, beautiful Malibu surf boat is what it's called. And my kids are good at it. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, but they can hit a couple buttons, and it shifts all the way to that boat over to one side, and it throws a wave back there that's a curled wave, and they can just surf. No ropes, anything. They just surf as they can go for miles and miles and miles surfing behind this boat. So we have boats, and I like boats. But you can have a beautiful boat that has a beautiful paint job and powerful engines that looks good and sounds good and feels good and seems good, but if there's a hole in that boat, I don't care how good looking that boat is. You probably better what? Fix the hole in that boat, or it is going to what? Sink. Even the most beautiful boats in the world sink with holes. Some of us have holes in our boats. You know what the hole in your boat might be? Who wants to help me here for a minute? Somebody just tell me. What's an example of a hole in a boat? Yes? Procrastination? Okay, that could be a major. If you're good at procrastination, raise your hand if you're good at that. You're really good at that. Putting off till tomorrow is something you ought to do today. Most human beings that's a pretty big hole in your boat. How do you fix that hole? By the way, with a boat, you got to pull it out of the water. I was driving one time with my kids out of Lake Powell. I'm going to watch my clock because I love you, but I love a whole bunch of other people too. I love you so much. You are so special to me, just like everybody else. I don't feel very good, but I love you. But listen, true story. Had my family on our boat one time. This was a number of years ago with another boat. And we're driving up through the lake, having fun going sightseeing. And one of the downfalls of Lake Powell, Arizona, Google that up sometime. Lake Powell, Powell, Lake Powell, Arizona. It's one of the most spectacular lakes. It's the longest lake in the world. It's the lake in the Grand Canyon behind the Grand Canyon Dam. It's not Hoover Dam, it's the other one. Shoot. Anyway, we're cruising up the lake, and this has sheer cliffs, and it's just so spectacular. The depth finder in the boat will say the water's 500 feet deep, and you'll be in a canyon where the walls of the canyon are 500 feet high, all around you. It's just spectacular. But when you're driving up that lake, if you're not careful, because there's sheer cliffs everywhere, sometimes you'll hit rocks in the water. So we're cruising along, and all of a sudden somebody yelled, "There's a rock!" And boom, our family. I don't think I was driving, but the boat slams onto a rock. And this was a big shelf that was about that far under the water that you could not see, just the way the sun was shining. And so all of a sudden this boat, because we were going fast enough that it hits that thing, it jolts, but the boat lunges up onto this shelf, and it tore a big hole in the bottom of that boat. And so we're trying to figure out, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And we got out, our family got out, and we're walking around in that much water, just our ankle deep, walking around our boat trying to figure out what are we going to do. So I made some phone calls. We had some people coming with some emergency folks to come rescue our family and then take us back in. And then I called another friend who came, and they hooked up a big rope to our boat and pulled it off that rock. And when they pulled it off the rock, it hadn't hit the prop, because the way the motor worked, it just pulled it up, and it didn't destroy the prop. So we pulled that boat off the rock, and we turned on the bilge pumps. Every boat has what's called a bilge pump that can pump quite a bit of water out of the boat if it starts taking on water. But it can't if it's a very big hole. Ask the Titanic. So anyway, I decided I'm going to drive it in. I'm not going to let this boat sit out there for a few days while we're trying to get somebody. So it was drivable. We started it up. It's now off the rock. Well, we pulled it off the rock, and within seconds, we started it and we drove it. We had followed this guy back into the shore. And we called ahead and had him back the trailer down into the water. And it was taking on more water, much more water than the bilge pumps could pump out. But we were throttling so fast, and this boat was going fast enough that we barely made it. They'd backed the trailer up in. Somebody else up there hooked up the trailer and pulled it down, and we were able to barely get that boat up to the trailer and winch it back up onto the trailer before it sunk. And so we had a little strategy, but it was taking on lots of water. And we had to take that boat into a place, and it took them a few weeks, and they had to reinforce down underneath there and had to rebuild that fiberglass. They had to reconstruct a bunch of stuff. Some of us have to reconstruct some stuff with these holes in our boat. What's another hole in your boat?
Fear.
Fear? Okay, fear is something everybody faces, I think. Fear of rejection, fear of contacting. The studies show that, at least in the United States of America, Canadians are stronger than U.S. folks, right? Say right. Yes. But in the United States, studies show that the number one fear of the American people is public speaking, meaning speaking in uncomfortable situations. And so fear is a real deal. How do you fix that?
Being uncomfortable, being practice being uncomfortable, you just fear. Like break barriers.
To learn to get comfortable doing uncomfortable things. Well, here's what I'm convinced of. If you do the things you fear, the death of fear is certain. If you face your fears, they will disappear. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. If you face your fears, they will disappear. So, let me tell you, let me just throw out for speed here, let me throw out a couple. Lack of focus is a big hole in people's boats. Laziness, lethargy. Some people aren't lazy, but some are. Some are unwilling to do things that are uncomfortable. Some just want to relax. Some are more caught up in entertainment. I was reading about a religious leader a while back, and I was so impressed. It's a guy that I just love a lot. And I studied his life a bunch. He died many years ago, but I studied his life because his life impressed me so much. And his dad was talking about him. This dad was talking about his son. And the dad said about his son, he said, "My son loves duty more than pleasure." And that's why he succeeded. He loves duty more than pleasure. You know, most of the world loves pleasure. Most of the world just love entertainment and games. I mean, so many people are addicted to gaming and they're hooked. I mean, you look at a lot of adult men and women now, they're just addicted to stuff. Addictions, by the way, are a major hole in your boat. And I don't know what kind of addictions any of us may have, but you better fix that stuff. You better get some help and fix that stuff. There's addiction to drugs and alcohol, and there's addiction to things like gaming. I mean, that's a real addiction. That does something to you. There's people that will sit and play those stupid games for hours and hours and hours and hours when they could be doing something else. Some people are addicted to bad stuff that put thoughts in their minds that aren't good and that don't help you become a better. I know one of the goals I set back in my early life, and I've always been a goal setter. I don't ever go anywhere without my game plan, my goals. This is my 2022 game plan. For 40 years now, I'm getting to be an old man. For 40 years, I've refused to allow the new year to come in without having that year planned out in detail. I just love to have it planned out. And I like to have my spiritual life, kind of who and what I want to be. I like to have my family life, who and what I want to be. I like to have my business life, who and what I want to. Just kind of like to have that stuff planned out. Because it helps guide me toward what I want to be. I mean, if I'm not deciding who and what I want to be, I'm just going to morph into whatever society makes me. And I kind of want to be in charge. I want my rudder deep in the water that I get to chart my course and I get to build a happy, fun, successful life. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. And so that's what I have right here. And so I have a game plan to help me become what I plan to become. I think if without having a game plan, all these other distractions come into our lives, and distraction is a hole in a boat that can sink you. And so what's the answer to distraction? What's the answer to a lot of things? It's simply getting on a course, charting your course, and charging ahead toward that. I get to decide that. You get to decide that. One thing about